let us know what is on your heart about this particular topic. Our topic for tonight is challenges to women's rights and the power they can't take away. The power within us that no one can take away is ultimately where we want to land. And meanwhile, as we're going through all that's all of the rapid fire changes that are coming in our world right now, we need a safe place to share from our hearts and to just be with what's going on from a place of authenticity, sincerity, from honesty, from, wherever we may be in the moment of, processing the incoming and unraveling what is moving from within us and all that it stirs up. So we intend for this to be a place for that tonight. And, Habiba and Kamala Wadad and I will start off with just sharing from our own hearts what's moving for us. And we do hope to land in a place of really finding our inner peace, our inner strength, our inner truth, and that place of empowerment that can be that place of guidance that we can access from within. And as I say, I like to say, it's like your body is like a vehicle. It is the vessel that you travel in. It's your earth ship. And it's hard to steer the ship if you're not in the driver's seat and buckled in. And a lot of the things that hit us in this rapid fire way when we're things that are unexpected, things that we're, not able to process in real time in the moment can just throw us out of the car. It's like hits the eject button sometimes. And so we want to find that place where we can land back in the driver's seat and be able to see the whole dashboard and see the road ahead and, to the best of our ability and steer the ship from there. That's when we can make our best choices and decisions. I'll just start by introducing myself and sharing what's on my heart about this. And then I'll let Kamala Wadad and Habiba I'll let each of you introduce yourselves as we go. As we were doing our practice session today, I'm going to be totally transparent. We were doing our little practice session today, and I kind of went off into a rant with all of my anger and let it unleash. And it's like, I just want to acknowledge that anger is I think a valid response to a lot of things that are happening right now. And at the same time, some of us might have anger about completely different things. We might have totally see opposite sides of things. I really honestly believe that we're living in a reality right now where kind of, depending on your social media feeds or what you're tuning into, you may have a completely different picture of what's real than I do. And, I want to acknowledge that and make space for it. And we're here not to fight with each other, not to be judgmental of each other, but to really hold a space for whatever your reality may be dictating for you in this moment. But in terms of the challenges to women's rights, if I can share about just where it really hits for me, a personal experience, I feel like in this moment, connected to my mother in a way that I haven't for many years. My mother, 83 years ago, I was looking at the dates on it. 83 years ago, my mother graduated from high school as a valedictorian of her class. Extremely brilliant, intelligent, insightful, very sensitive, and creative woman. She was offered a full scholarship to college in that day, but her parents wouldn't let her go because they said that's where girls go to get pregnant. It was not common for girls to go to college at that time. She was held back from that. She stayed home. She met my father. Well, she already knew my father, I think. I'm not sure. She got married at 18, had her first child at 19, had number 6 right here at 39. She would be 101 today. She lived a life. I knew her. By the time I came along, she was tired. I'll grant that. The woman that I know, I talked to my oldest sister, the one that was born when she was 19 as opposed to 39. We're 19 years apart. She remembers my mother having happy days, but not always. I don't remember my mother having happy days. I remember a woman who was exhausted, who was just beat down by life. I saw her as creative and insightful, but she didn't have an outlet for it. She was so depressed. She did work her whole life. She worked in jobs that were, low paying women jobs, traditionally female jobs. She had her struggles with being valued and really being compensated for what all she brought to the table. And she was very underutilized in her gifts and her creativity. She was depressed. There were days, weeks when she didn't get out of bed except to fall to the ground and crawl to the bathroom. And I don't exaggerate on that. There were, as kids, we'd have to find a ride to school. When she passed away right after I graduated from college, and she, I believe, was waiting for the last one to be done so that she could leave the planet. She really, I think for most of my life, didn't want to be here. I saw her. It pained me so bad. As a child, I would get angry and I would get just devastated because I saw a woman who was so capable and so gifted, but stuck, totally stuck and just unfulfilled. I graduated from college 43 years ago, and I was accepted into a mathematics honors program in college. I was very gifted I think I took after my mother in that way. And I was told by several professors, women aren't good at math. Except that I was in the honors programs and I had the top scores in the class. I was like number 1 or number 2 in my classes. And I had one professor at the beginning of class. This one professor, I had the second highest grade in the class where only 2 of us had passing grades. I had in the my grade was a 96. Everybody else was like 50 and below. I'm not kidding. Because it was one of those classes where you either got it or you didn't. He gave me a D in that class. The guy that sat next to me who had a 40 average got a B. When I talked to the professor, he said, I can give whatever grade I want. It doesn't matter about your scores. When I went into corporate, I hit the same thing. I excelled. I worked hard. I proved myself. I got half, if that, of what the guys got financially. And my second line manager, it was one of 3 women in a department of 80. My second line manager brought me in on a weekly basis to berate me and tell me women don't belong there, women don't make it there, women blah, blah, blah. Had a woman break a nail one time, had to go home, blah, blah, blah. I mean, over and over, I got the same crap. And when I see the women in our world who have made strides and had breakthroughs and busted glass ceilings and the websites that highlight what they've done and what's possible for girls, young girls and women. And, when I see that and I see those things being removed and erased from our history, it pisses me off for me and for my mom and for all of my nieces and nephews and my great nieces and nephews who are on the planet right now, who are making their way. I cannot tell you, it infuriates me. It infuriates me to see this happening and to see these things coming about that are going to, dictate, that are trying to take away our voices through voting rights, trying to dictate what we can and can't do in terms of our bodies and birth control and our ability to excel, our ability to speak up, our ability to just have a fair chance in the world. And to be able to have a say-so in autonomy over what happens for us in our lives, it infuriates me. It does. And it breaks my heart. I've recently finished a book, and it's in interior design, about to be published, which I think most of you know about. It's called Fear, Food, and Feminine Power. It's about the fear that we carry, the oppression that we carry, that tension, that constriction that women have been so conditioned to, whether it's through past traumas or experiences or just the cultural conditioning that we live in. It's that feeling that keeps us powerless and stuck and fearful. And then we self-soothe with food. Then we wrestle with the body that portrays the struggle, whether it's through our health issues or through our image issues that we struggle with, and all the societal messages that tell us we're supposed to be one thing or another. It's, and then the book also offers a 7-step healing process to step us through, because underneath that place that is oppressed, that is stuck, is the truth of who you are and the power that you carry. And each one of us has the ability to pass through this doorway and access that and bring it forward and really be who we are here to be, what we were created to be, to break the barriers that we're here to break, to represent what we're here to represent in this world. We are not meant. There are so many, and also the book addresses many of the just outright lies that have been told to women over and over and over again for centuries about our intellect, about our capability, about our agency, about our spirituality and our connection with the divine, and who we are as spiritual leaders on the planet. And all of that is within us. All of that is within us. And in a world that is I just feel like we can't go backwards, where we are separated from that, and that part of us is oppressed. Because if we are to live in a world of peace and harmony and unity, it's got to be through that accessing and embodying the sacred feminine in that way that truly is that what brings us to that connection with source, what brings us to that place of, where humanity can join together and come into communion with source to live according to our connection with love and compassion and truth. Let us know. I will pass it now to Wadad. You want to follow up?
You. So my name is Kamala Wadad. I grew up in the Midwest, where we are masters of people pleasing, but we also have that deep kindness. And I went to college and was getting a degree in theater. And halfway through, I realized I wanted to get a minor. And really, out of just pure fortune, I was looking at what kind of minor could I get done in about 2 years, and it was women's studies. And in that women's studies program, in order to get enough credits, I had to do an apprenticeship at Planned Parenthood. And that, it was, I think of my life, once I really dug into women's studies, as this light bulb that just went off. I don't think they would be able to do this now, but as an intern, I was actually able to go in with doctors, which a lot of doctors do their residencies at places like Planned Parenthood, and work with some of the patients. And I was just really shocked. It was I was, 20 years old, 21, at how this clinic was providing care for so many women that were not teenagers and not college girls. They were women that were alone, or women that had been rejected from their families, or women that were living with HIV or STDs, a lifetime of it. And one of the female doctors said to a patient that came in who was having an STD flare up, and I'll never forget, the doctor said, "Oh, is this the anniversary of his death?" So this doctor knew this patient's life so intimately that every time this level of stress would hit, it would trigger her STD. And I was like, wait, what is women's health? Part of my women's studies minor, we also had women's groups. and like women's conferences. And in one of the women's conferences, I signed up for like panels and things that you could attend. And one of them was called a moon group. And all of these women would get together during the full moon. And again, it was just like, where was this in the patriarchal Midwestern culture I grew up in? Nowhere. But I realized how powerful we can be as women when we come together, when we step outside of the patriarchal competition model. And and so for me, as my sort of like inner programming started to unravel, and I just continued to learn as I went, I started to see the misogyny, and I started to see all the injustices. I'm the person that's always like, what can we do about it? Like, okay, I see all this going on, now what? And I believe in these times of great turmoil is also a time of deep awakening, potential of deep healing. And so my thought was, what are the latent parts of us that have this chance to wake up, so we can see like what is our part to play? But I realized that as women, it's easier to know that and to hold that when you feel a whole group of women supporting you. When you feel maybe this is more like a mastermind every Wednesday, or a discussion where you feel like, hey, I really kind of wanted to run for local office, and we're going to be like, yes, yes, we support you 100%. Or I really wanted to start a food pantry, or I really feel like I need to be in spiritual retreat doing spiritual work. Like, whatever it is that is your call, we want you to feel that sense of support. And I don't know, it might have been like 8 years ago now. I was in a women's retreat with Fauzia Rosina Arawi. She is a Sufi master who is from Austria now, but she originally was from Iraq, and she wrote a book called Grandmother Secrets. Again, like another journey into another perspective of women all over the world. Like, what is their experience, and what is the common thread that we are weaving to this beautiful tapestry? And she said two things that were really profound for me. One of them was, take pride in who you are, take pride in your creation. But then on a personal level, I realized as women, we might need to make the journey to really understand what we are, who we are, and what we carry, to really take pride in that, to fall in love with ourselves. And I just want to create that space for that. I want to create that container for all of you to fall in love with yourself, to heal whatever parts you maybe don't want to look at, so that whatever help we can give in this moment in time that we are personally called to do, we can do. And then the second thing, when I was asking Fauzia, I noticed a lot of women are rising up. They're stepping into leadership positions. They're on boards of director, circles. Like, why is that? And I'll never forget, she said, because women create more unity, and they're much more collaborative by nature. And so I thought, we are. Sometimes, like, just meeting with Habiba and Master Debra, I can feel like I can accomplish the things that I'm inspired to do, because these women are supporting me, because these women are saying, yes, we'd do it. So so that's sort of like quick history, and why I'm here. I really feel like we each have a part, and something in us is being awakened. After we empty the bucket and talk about the things we're frustrated about, then like what's underneath that? Where are the still waters within you that are guiding you? So I am just honored to be here with you. I'm so stoked to have all of you here. And I'm going to hand that over now to Habiba to introduce herself.
Hi, all. Welcome. Absolutely. I too feel very honored to be here, and I carry a little bit of bits and pieces of both what Deborah and Widad talked about. My mother just passed a year ago at 92, and she was such an inspiration to me on so many levels because of the way that she carried her feminine power. And it wasn't easy. There was a lot. But she was, like she was one that if she hadn't had 5 children at home, she would have been marching with Martin Luther King. And the only reason she didn't go was because someone said to her, if something happens to you, what happens to your children? And so she chose not to go for that reason, but she was very active, both with civil rights and with women's rights. And as a profession, she was a spiritual director. And so what I watched in her and what I learned from her was this place where she made every person feel loved and heard. She was the one who, the Jehovah's Witnesses would knock on the door and she would invite them in for tea and conversation. And, we were Catholic and people were like, what are you doing? Right. And it was never like her faith didn't sway. She just really was genuinely open to having the conversation to what really matters. So I was deeply inspired by that. I also carry a fire in me that is really strong. And so I kind of got into the fight, when I got into the working world and, people wanted to keep me small. And I was like, why? Like, I've got so many things, So my first job, I worked through 5 different positions in the company before I decided to move on because they weren't going to let me grow anymore. And so I always had that yearning and that passion to grow and to be more and to learn and to do and to make a difference. And so I got into healing work, and of course, everybody thought I was crazy and thought I had joined a cult and all this other. I mean, it was the things that were said were just ridiculous. Somebody asked me if I was going to have to give up my firstborn child. It's like, where does this come from that I'm following a spiritual path because it's what lights me up? And it's so my choices have often been questioned. And then, when I had my children, it was like, I moved into, I guess what at the time we would call attachment parenting. I carried my babies a lot and I nursed them when they wanted to nurse and I co-slept with them and I homeschooled them. And of course, everybody in my family and my ex-husband's family were like, what are you doing? And so I was just constantly challenged. My response to that as a young woman was fight. It was, by God, I'm going to prove myself because I felt like I had to. And I very strongly went into a masculine energy to hold that power, what I thought was power, because otherwise I felt like people were going to crush me. And so it was that battle within me of how do I take a stand and be true to who I am? But as my children grew and people started to recognize that like they're really good human beings, like maybe she's not so crazy after all. Um, I started to look at how I was carrying myself and even in my marriage, the things that I was doing that were actually not helpful because I was being so strong. And it created an imbalance in our relationship because I was being the man in the family as well as the mother, right? So it was looking at those roles and looking at like, what am I doing? Because for me, this idea of feminine power was like, yes, I know that I carry this truth and I carry this deep, deep love. What do I do with that if I'm not, standing in that being strong kind of a place? How do I allow myself to be in the true feminine? And so for me, that's where a lot of, like I wrestle with still with a lot of what's going on in the world because of that. Like, how do I stand in the face of the insanity that I think we're dealing with right now? But do it in a way that is genuinely from my heart and soul. And so there is that place of healing the places where I felt like I'm either too much or not enough, because that's been this internal battle for most of my life. I feel personally like I'm in a really good place, but when I come up against things in the world, it's like it's a reflection for me, right? So I think a lot of this process and what I'm encouraged by in connecting with others and having these conversations and doing the work is to heal the pains, but even as Wadad was speaking, it's like empowering that place in us that is true. And for me, it's, I think what I want to speak to in the feminine power piece of it is that when we are in the genuine place of feminine power, there is that equally balanced place of the masculine power. And we find that way that we weave together within ourselves and within society, within whatever the gender roles and whatever else that are going on. What it boils down to for me is this place of sovereignty where we come into the truth of who we are in a balanced way within our hearts and souls. And when we know that, it's that place where it's the power they can't take away. Nobody can take that away from us. And yet, it also gives me the power to take a stand, to be able to speak, to be able to say, what's happening is not right. And to do that from a place that is empowered versus coming in from that fight place. So that's a lot of what that is moving in me, and again, that I feel is the opportunity for us to travel together and to heal through and find new places and support each other in each of our journeys in that deep inner truth. So
Thank you, Habiba, and thank you, Wadad, as well. I think what you bring up there, Habiba, is a really important thing, in Wadad also. What is the feminine power? What does that look like? What does that mean? Because there's a strong picture in our world that, like right now, I think one of the latest things that is coming into the media, that's, media coverage, is the incentives that are being offered for women to have more children. There's a book by Peter Zahan, I believe, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing his name correctly, that's called The End of the World is Just the Beginning. And I listened to audiobooks, and I listened to that a year or so ago. It came out in 2022, where he is a geopolitical strategist who is an advisor to a lot of governments around the world. And particularly, he's from the United States, and so he's an advisor to our government here. And he said, he was talking about the economic balance of powers, in our world, and was talking about, where the United States sits and where China sits. And there is like, on the one hand, a very real thing about, okay, people are having fewer and fewer children. And so is there going to be, if our economies collapse and things have to be brought back within our own country, manufacturing and those kind of things, in order for us, because, trade falls apart. Is the United States going to be able to survive with its current population trajectory? And the answer is no, that we will collapse unless people start having more babies. And I think the thing that pisses me off is that it's coming down as a religious, and not saying that okay, there might be some truth to the religious motive for some people, but let's not bullshit each other. Excuse me. There is a very strong, the whole abortion thing, the incentives to have more children, wanting to put programs in place to teach women about their bodies so that they know how to get pregnant. All of this, says the men. And, and it's that coupled with, we want you to have the babies, and then, we'll give you some money that you can help to pay your a fraction of your medical bills, but we're going to then limit healthcare. We're going to limit the support that you can get. And we're not going to do anything about the child care, and we're going to make it harder for women to have jobs. And let's be real, we don't live in, very few people can survive on a one income household. So, how are the children going to be, how are the parents going to be supported to raise healthy children, and so it's like, to me, it's not, I don't see a well thought out plan that really supports. And some, granted, this might be very helpful for some who really do desire for, to support with having children. And I know there are a lot of people who are in that boat who might feel really supported by this. When I look at big picture and, of like where it's coming from, honestly, I guess that's my lack of trust with the patriarchal, oligarchical, the corporate structure that runs our world. And granted, I know the economy, keeping the economy going is important. So having enough workers on our soil that are going to be able to, support the businesses in order to be able to still feed into programs that are going to support our elderly as people are living longer. All of this is important, and it does need to be thought about. But oh boy, it's just, I don't like the way, to me, it's, as I said, it's not being straight. And it's also forcing the hand by putting laws in place that are limiting, restricting, and, not supporting. And it's like trying to steer it through laws and through force in a lot of ways. And so that's, as Wadad, when we were talking about this the other day, brought up about, why it is so important for women to be involved in structuring our world and our culture, is because as women, I think, I do believe that we're going to come at it from a different place. What is feminine versus masculine? What is feminine energy versus masculine energy? I know, and archetypically speaking, we say the feminine is the receptive, right? And the masculine is the active. And so what have we looked at that and say, oh, well, women are supposed to receive from the men. In my corporate job, I can't tell you how many times I heard men saying that, oh, but man had to give up a rib so that a woman could be created. And we have, because women screwed everything up, and they're like, so weak and easily seduced, and they, sinned and then committed all of humanity to this world life of pain and suffering. And the men have to rule over the women because the women are not capable of making their own decisions and choices. I mean, that was the thing. Right. And to me, it rings of that. It rings of that again. And it's like, I write about this in the book. If you really look at the story of Adam and Eve, that interpretation of it is what has permeated our culture and our laws and the way that we see feminine and masculine power. It is just not right. There is another way to look at that story that actually paints feminine and masculine in their highest expression, as an expression that does look at that balance of power and unity. And it shows the woman as not being receptive from the man, but being receptive from source, being that state, holding that state of unity that can hold the dichotomies and hold unity. And, so to really, there's a Native American proverb that says the highest calling of the woman is to lead a man to his soul so as to unite him with source. The highest calling of the man is to protect the woman so she is free to walk the earth unharmed. And even that, can like throw off some alarm bells. But I've begun to see this as the feminine power being that central place, that core light inside of each one of us that does connect with source, that does receive that information about what is that connection with source? What is that place of unity? How do we hold all of the multiplicity, the dichotomy, all of the different things that are going on from a place of balance and harmony and unity? How do we hold it and bring it into, a place of light, a place of compassion, a place of love and strength? Because that compassion is not the opposite of strength. Right? I mean, that's another thing that's been going around. To live with empathy, to live with compassion is not weakness, that is strength, right? We find our strength through our vulnerability, through our compassion, through our love. That is strength. And as women, we have our oxytocin, which, I mean, everybody has it, right? But it which is that place that gives us that connection with that love that is bliss, takes us into bliss state. And we also have the vasopressin, which is the mama tiger hormone that says, if you harm my children, I will take you out. And so it's like we have that in a beautiful way, in a way to balance, that can say, okay, how can we create a world where we can have what we need for the greater good for all, but not from this deceptive mandate that is going to control, right? And that is really what I rebel against. How can we do this from the feminine power? And Wadad, if you want to say more about what you were saying the other day.
I'm curious, do you feel empowered right now? Do you feel a little bit stuck right now? Like, do you feel like you have a sense of direction of like what you're feeling called to do in the midst of the chaos that's going on? For that, because, I think that we're in a time where an old world is actually falling apart. Mm-hmm. And we're feeling the last gasp of these dominating structures, of, these structures that say we have to manipulate, we have to, like everything that you're talking about, Mestra. And if we look at it as an old world that's crumbling, like we asked our spiritual teacher once, like, is it ever going to change? And he said, yeah, the people will get tired of it. We want to be there for you in whatever way we can, and to keep building this circle of empowerment so that we can be calm in the middle of the storm that's happening, and you feel supported to do what you're called to do, even if that's just healing your own heart. We're here for you in that.
God said, do have the book Fear, Food, and Feminine Power coming out. That is, I started writing that book 8 years ago, and it's been one thing and another that kind of kept delaying it, right, over the years. In the last 8 years, since just before I started writing the book just before I moved in with my dad. I moved in with him for his health reasons. At the time, he was given 1 year to live, and now he's 102 and still here. So, it's kind of been, as Ram Dass says, if you think you're enlightened, go home to your family. So it's given me a lot more insights as things are unfolding. I feel like the timing is perfect right now, because what it really does is invites us, yes, all in divine timing. It invites us to really access the truth of the feminine, which is different for each. Well, okay, there are some things that are universal in terms of truth of the feminine, how we carry masculine and feminine energies, and the synthesis of those within our own beings is unique for everyone. And this is why it's so important for us to cleanse and wash ourselves of what society says is suitable for someone in a female body, suitable for someone in a male body, and what it even means to live in a female body or a male body, or relate to gender at all. I mean, I feel like we really need to wash those and learn who we are. What is the synthesis and the what is the word I'm losing here? But our own. There are so many aspects of self Some of my aspects will at times be more in the feminine, and some of my aspects will be more in the masculine. I have place of where those flow at any given time in my life. That's true for all of us. And the most important thing is that we really come to know ourselves independent of what this world that we live in tells us we're supposed to be, or how we're supposed to look, or what we're supposed to be good at and not good at, what kind of roles we're suited for. That's all crap, if you ask me, because every one of us is unique, and each one of us has an inspiration and a gift inside of us, multiple gifts inside of us that are here to be recognized, to be seen, to be expressed, and to be valued. We are like, if you think of the light of source that lives through us, the breath of source that breathes us, and the facets of the jewels that are here to be seen and to be known and to be like cherished and loved and appreciated. It's all to be expressed in its own unique way. And if you think of us as puzzle pieces and this life as a multidimensional puzzle, if you think of, if you've ever worked a puzzle, like, and say a piece wants to show up on the board, but not like hide itself and shrink itself, and not let all its little knobbies come up and take their space, not let all of its colors show, you know, be able to see, like, put the puzzle together and see the big picture. So it really does take each of us finding our unique colors, our unique shapes, our unique, attributes, and showing up in the fullness of those to complete the puzzle, so that we really can see and realize this evolution that our humanity is moving into, and the world that is being created from that. In terms of, there was a question about if you have to be a Sufi to come to this. We're all from, we've all studied together with a Sufi master from Jerusalem, and, all from that same, but in terms of the people that signed up for this webinar, it's about 50-50, and absolutely not. It's for, as our teacher used to say, if everyone knew their religion well, there would be only one religion, a religion of love, peace, mercy, justice, equality, and freedom. And that's all about the heart. And he used to talk about the deep sincere, it is about the sincerity in the heart and the passion in the heart. And so that's why we're here. And you don't have to be in any religion at all, or affiliated with anything in order to contain that within. And that's what we're here to explore.
That if you're longing for healing, that's all that really matters. As we work through the book, I've been a healer for 25 years, but it was really wonderful to see how many parts were still kind of, underlying programs. I'm a musician, so there's always like background vocals. There's like background vocals of my life that were still patterns that I just didn't see. And I think that when we start to just witness them, sometimes that's just enough. Like, our higher selves signed up for this time. Something in us knew that it was going to be a great time of growth, a great time of change. And our souls were like, sign me up. And so I remind myself of that. Like, when it gets really hard, God gives no soul what it cannot bear. But we sometimes need our brothers and sisters to help us bear what's happening. And those things are a mirror for us. Like, I was listening to a spiritual podcast, and they said, oh, this is going to be such a great time that's going to awaken the sleeper cells. I was like, what? But it's true. Like, I'm sure some of you have something you've always wanted to do, and there's an urgency that might be waking that up right now.
That's the other reason why we wanted to come together, to create a space of where we can express, where we can be supported, where we can be witnessed, where we can just share, allow a safe space for that. It's like when we witness each other and support each other in our sharing and allowing our gifts to emerge and be seen, it reprograms the nervous system that says, hey, you can do this and be safe. Because part of the reason why we hide and don't let all of our puzzle pieces fill out to take up the full space is because we've been conditioned to believe that it wasn't safe. And it's that in itself can be a transformative experience.